Despite the online consensus that League is a very toxic and addictive game that you should never get into, I had always found it interesting, not for the game itself, but for the lore built around it. Ever since I first found out about League at age 12 or 13, I always wished there was some sort of single player game or a story mode where we could explore these characters with more depth, but also because I dislike multiplayer games. There are more than 150 champions, and every single one of them has their own dedicated page. Riot Games has pulled no punches in developing the lore of League. The world of Runeterra is so meticulously described, from its regions to its ideologies, their power structures, and all the characters that live in them. All this untapped lore just waiting to be filled into something, because at the end of the day, League of Legends has no story. It has all these champions, but you never really got to know them as characters, their flaws and their virtues, what makes them tick. You never really broke away from that top-down view to be up close and personal with them. Enter Arcane, a source to feel all the untapped lore of this beautiful world. Arcane takes just a handful of characters from the League roster and builds a fantastic story that ties them all together. In Arcane, we focus on the utopian nation of Piltover and its underground counterpart Zaun. Every aspect of Arcane has been polished to near perfection. Characterization, narrative, world, animation, music. Arcane is the type of story that shows rather than tells. The way certain characters act, the way they say certain things, the way their facial expressions change. You can feel the emotion and the weight of what's being said. You can read in between the lines. You can understand why they do what they do. It shows you that they're vulnerable and human like you and me. Something the game couldn't do due to the lack of a narrative. Not only does Arcane make champions like Vi, Jace, Caitlyn, and Heimerdinger feel real, but it also gives you some original characters that are just as well written. Mel, Silco, Vander, Marcus, all these characters change in some shape or form as the story continues due to the environment they're in or the circumstances they face, which brings me to my next point, the world. At face value, Piltover looks to be in the good and Zaun just plain bad. But as you continue the show, you really start to question whether that's true. Each city has its own flaws and reasons that you start to wonder who's in the wrong here. In just one episode, you can see how Piltover and Zaun contrast one another, how the topside basks openly in the sun while the underground is always dark and suffocating, to the point where topside officers have to wear masks when they go down there. In just one episode, you can see how the prejudice runs deep in both cities about their counterparts and how it affects their thinking.
And I'm gonna bury the lot of you.
You can see the political structure of both cities and how peace has pretty much been hanging on by a thread till now. Music is subjective, so something like the opening might not be your cup of tea. But the music of Arcane is so broad and diverse that there's bound to be something that gets your head bopping. Almost every episode features a song sung by an artist that's complemented by music video-like visuals to go along with. And these aren't just for show, they serve a purpose to the story. They aren't used constantly because that will only diminish the effect, but when used, they elevate the scene to new heights. If you haven't noticed already, the animation of Arcane is drop dead gorgeous. When I first saw it, it reminded me of the animation used in Into the Spider-Verse minus the comic book effect and animating the characters in twos. This has a more realistic feel to it, to set a realistic tone. The animation is done by Fortiche, a French animation company that has worked with Riot for a long time producing small-scale videos to work as cinematics for the game. Arcane has reportedly been in production for over 7 years, due to the learning curve they had to get over to animate on a huge scale project such as this. Fortiche has this way of making the camera realistic that sells some of these scenes. Every frame is a product of passion and hard work. The wide shots are wallpaper material. The fight scenes look like nothing you've seen before. The scenes where Jinx's delusions are actualized on screen, as well as her manic episodes, are uncomfortable and at the same time saddening to look at. Arcane wouldn't be half the show it is today if it were not for the amazing cast that nailed their roles to perfection and the fantastic staff that dedicated years to this project, both from the Riot team and the Fortiche team. Arcane is a modern masterpiece that has set the standard for video game adaptations for years to come.